Welcome to the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast brought to you by ProudMouth. I'm your host, Matt Halloran. Being your own loud is not new to marketing, but the mindset, strategies, and resources to help you get there are evolving faster than this industry is keeping up. It is time to find a new perspective on what works why and how to move your business forward. Listen as I interview guests to help you learn from them how to be your own loud. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Halloran. Now, I am sure you've heard about our next guest. He's been everywhere. He's at just about every conference, speaks on main stage all the time. And his official title is Chief Behavioral Officer at Orion Advisor Services, Dr. Daniel Crosby. How are you, sir?
Hey, great to be with you. We're in plaid today.
I know you're actually looking a little bit more Canadian than I usually look. I have a shirt just like that with that buffalo plaid. I absolutely love it. All right. Well, let's kind of get started. So I know people know who you are because, again, you're pretty much almost like omnipresent in financial services. What are you working on right now? Just from an academic standpoint, from a research standpoint, what are you seeing? What's going on in our industry?
Yeah. So at Orion, we're working on something we're super excited about called the BFI 20. So it is a 20-question assessment of an individual's financial values. And what's extra cool about it is it can actually be paired with that of a partner, right? So, a spouse, a partner, or even a child or someone with whom, you might eventually pass down legacy assets. But basically, if you use it solo, you're able to see sort of what your financial values are across 5 dimensions, 20 questions, hence the BFI 20. But what's my favorite part, though, is that like my wife and I could take it and we could see where we sit relative to each other on these various continua. And we could say, okay, you have a value for this, I have a value for that. It's totally non-pejorative. It's not like, she's right, he's wrong. But just helping you to gain deeper understanding of those financial values, where they may come into conflict, where you may have blind spots. So we think this is going to be an awesome tool for understanding clients, adding value to relationships, marketing, influence, all the things that you talk about. So we think it's going to be a really neat tool that we're super excited to roll out.
We're going to dive into all of that more deeply. We're going to dive a little bit about, how you can use stuff like this for content for all of your social media. And then we're going to switch gears a little bit later in the show and really talk about influence specifically and how you as a expert in behavioral finance look at how we talk about influence. But I want to dive into that a little bit more deeply because advisors, as you know, are always looking for meaningful content that's going to engage their audience. How are you guys seeing advisors using this? I mean, are they going to be able to post it on their website? Are they going to be able to write content surrounding this? Are you guys providing them with any support?
Yeah, we're going to be providing all sorts of social media support, white papers, blog posts, all of this to contextualize it, because there's candidly just not much like it out there. But, so much of what we do, if we're honest, is seen by the outside world as kind of boring. You could say, hey, come let us have a look at your portfolio and we'll give you a second opinion. And while that's certainly a valuable service, it isn't very spicy, shall we say? And so we think that behavioral finance has interesting value to add in terms of adding real value to people's lives, right? And as an entree or an introduction to an advisor. So our advisors will be able to post this with their social media. Their friends can share it with their friends, and those leads will accrue back to that advisor. And so this is kind of a cool thing where you're going to get a report about your financial values, how you communicate, how much you worry, whether you see money as sort of an individualistic or a collectivistic good, all these things. And you'll be able to share that with the people you love. And our advisors will gain deeper insights into their clients and get introduced to people who are interested in having conversations about financial wellness. So we think it's a win for everybody.
I'm going to challenge something there because do you want advisors to take this too so that they understand their relation to money? Because Doc, what you're talking about here, I don't think advisors necessarily entirely have fleshed out their feelings surrounding these things.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. So, Jason Zweig many years ago, great financial writer and a great thinker in behavioral finance, he had this speech he gave and turned into a talk that was all about using behavioral finance as a mirror and not a window. And I think that a lot of times, we use behavioral finance as a window onto other people's quirks and their irrationalities. And when people read books like mine or lots of other folks who've written great books in the field, they go, aha, like I saw my spouse or I saw my dad or, I saw my neighbor in these descriptions of these quirky, irrational behaviors. But I'm a clinical psychologist by education. And when I was going through my training to be a shrink, the most valuable thing, the two most valuable things I did was first get my own therapy, right? Because you're not a blank slate, and God knows if you went to graduate school for psychology, you're very messed up. Like no one does that. Nobody does that because they're well adjusted. So, you go figure yourself out first. And then the second most valuable thing I did was we would watch tape the way that an athlete does. We would watch tape of our therapy sessions and have our peers break it down and say, stop the tape. Why did you say this and not that? And so, yeah, to your point, I really believe that people have a sixth sense for authenticity. And if you are preaching, if you're preaching this financial gospel high from the mountaintop, where you're viewed as perfect and impervious to all these things, people are going to smell how fake that is, and they're not they're not going to respond. You won't be able to influence them. But if you've done your own work, if you've been humble and candid with yourself about your own shortcomings, you can take clients only as far as you've taken yourself in some respects. And so we hope that first and foremost, this will be something for advisors to learn about their own behavior.
I want to unpack some of that stuff there. Something that we have been talking about on this show for quite a long time is when you're unapologetically yourself, and the only way that you get there is through self-reflection and work on yourself. You actually don't have any competition because there's no other Dr. Daniel Crosby. There's no other Matt Halloran. I mean, well, there is on the internet. He plays baseball and I guess he sucks, but whatever. But the other thing is, I want to talk just a little bit about that because I didn't go on to get a PhD, but my master's degree was as a therapist, and we had to do the same thing, right? I mean, I was sitting around class looking around thinking to myself, man, these people need more work than they're probably ever going to give. And I don't know if advisors look around the room and think the same sorts of things, because they probably should. We have interviewed, so we've done 7,000 podcasts for advisors. In the beginning of all of our launches for our shows with our clients, they have to tell their story. And Doc, it's unbelievable the baggage that these advisors have surrounding their relationship to money. And sometimes our podcasts are the first time they've actually talked about it. So I'm so glad that's awesome. What an amazing self-reflective tool. And then that also gives them that ability to say, well, let me ask you this. No, I'm not going to infer that. Do you then recommend advisors say, I think like that too? How do you, in your expertise, see advisor being able to share the results of theirs to, I don't know, deepen the relationship with the client who also took it?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky, just the same way that it's tricky in therapy. And I'm going to give you kind of an unsatisfactory middle ground answer, sort of an it depends answer, because the old school therapeutic thought, like the Freudian thought, was your client lays on a chaise lounge, you have their back, your back to them, and they can never see you. You're a blank slate there to know nothing about you. If they ask you anything about your life, you are only to say, gee, that's interesting. And and that's sort of a weird way to move through both clinical work and advisory work. But then on the other hand, we do run the risk of making it too much about ourselves, or sort of imbuing our personal preferences, because again, there's no right here. Right? Like, for instance, one of the categories we found, the way that we studied these values was by finding what people fight about, because it's as Richard Thaler said when he was doing all his great work on the behavioral biases. if you want to study memory, you don't study memory, you study forgetting. And so if you want to study financial values, you don't ask people like, "Hey buddy, what are your financial values?" You find the points of conflict in relationships, and you know that there's friction there because these things are important to these folks. And so that's what we did, is we effectively arrived at these financial values by asking couples what they fight about when they fight about money. And so the number one fight was, is money best used to secure today, or excuse me, enjoy today or secure tomorrow? So, right, do you sort of seize the day with this money and enjoy the moment because YOLO and tomorrow's not promised? Or do you sort of buy yourself some safety and some freedom down the line? And the answer is, of course, both are important, right? Like most people lean, one way or the other, but both are important. And if you're too far towards either pole, it's sort of unsatisfactory, and you're going to live, a one-dimensional life. And so I think the advisor needs to be candid and forthcoming and transparent enough that they're authentic and that they're engaging. But I also think that you don't want to make it about you. The research is really unequivocal that when you ask people, in a first meeting, how was that meeting with your advisor? One of the best predictors of being liked in that first meeting is time of possession. And if that client gets to talk a lot, they tend to like you better. So, making sure that you're balancing the need to be authentic and transparent with the baggage that maybe brought you to the industry in the first place, and not making this about you.
One of the biggest struggles that we have with some of our clients is the fact that they want their whole podcast to be about them. So again, it's them talking at people instead of seeing like it's a conversation. Now, you and I also have a common hero. And so we're going to switch gears here because when you and I had met, and I think it was at the Riskalyze conference. Were you at Riskalyze?
I've been at a few Riskalyzes. I
Okay.
wasn't this year.
All right. Well, I can't remember where in the heck we just ran into each other. I know you do a lot of conferences and I do too. But one of the things that I had brought up was Dr. Robert Cialdini, right, with his 7 principles of influence. And you have been using the word influence, which I greatly appreciate, because that's such a vital mindset shift. Marketing has fundamentally changed. You have to market to your ideal client and prospect in the media they prefer while they're there, with organic, authentic content. So I've said that a million times, and I'm going to say it a million times more because it is so important and so powerful. Let's talk about Cialdini's principles very quickly, and also talk about what have you witnessed in the world of financial services? You've been here for a bit, right? A lot of people ask you a lot of questions. You get pulled into a lot of meaningful discussions because, well, of your background. Are you seeing a shift in the mindset that advisors realize that influence is more important than the pomp and circumstance, the egocentric way that it was when I even got into the industry in the early 2000s?
So, let me be unequivocal here. There is no competency that is as important as influence for a financial advisor. Like it is the meta skill, it is the meta competency. And the reason I say this is every facet of an advisor's job has influence at the heart of it. Business development is influencing people to partner with you, to part with their hard-earned cash in exchange for your goods and services. Leadership within your organization is persuading people to rally behind you and work in service of a common goal. Behavioral coaching, clearly near and dear to my heart, is influencing and persuading people to set aside their more natural short-term, action-oriented impulses around money and be patient and long-term and all these other things, none of which come natural to humankind. So if you look at sort of every tool, every competency that an advisor is called upon to excel at, influence is at the very heart of that. So yeah, like, look, if folks like me and you have anything to do with it, I talk about Cialdini. I've sold a lot of books for Cialdini. Like I talk about his stuff all the time, and as we discussed, he doesn't need any more money. Or we know what he's charging for a keynote. He doesn't need to sell any more books. But I've sold a lot of books for him, And it's because I think that influence, if you could just be good at one thing, it's the Swiss Army knife of being a good advisor.
So out of the 7 principles, let's talk about a couple of them, right? So which one is one that really jumps out to you that you think if an advisor implemented just one of these 7 or maybe 2 of these 7, that they would be a fundamentally better, more influential advisor?
Yeah, so it's hard to choose one. I'm gonna go, look, I'll go with my favorite one, which is reciprocity, right? We all have these mental bank accounts, these sort of relational bank accounts, debits and credits, and we go, okay, this person did something kind for me. I owe them one, or look, I've had Matt over for dinner 3 times in a row. Like that jerk isn't coming over again until he has me over to his house. And so, we all have these. And telling advisors that, look, one of the most powerful things you can do is to just put some good out into the world, to just be spreading sunshine, right? Like to just be adding value every day, doing acts of kindness, adding value, creating content that makes people smarter, better, faster, stronger, like all these things that comes back to you in spades when you need a favor called in, and not in any kind of like weird mafia way. Like it's just a it's just this natural thing that if you move through the world in a generous way, in a curious way, and you share the findings of that curiosity with other people, when it's time for you to ask for something, the world's going to be good to you. And I think that's just like an awesome way to live a life.
One of my favorite quotes from recent television is "Be curious, not judgmental," from Ted Lasso, and that some of us try to live our lives that way. Luckily, being curious behind a microphone is kind of my job, which makes me super happy. I get to live that. But let's talk about the principle of reciprocity. Because if you partner the principle of reciprocity with the principle of consistency, this is where content marketing is the key. If you are constantly helping your general audience, whatever your niche is, get better, stronger, faster, smarter, at some point they're going to say, the cup will runneth over, and they'll be like, I'm ready. Hey, I know this guy. His name is Dr. Daniel Crosby. He's been telling me how to manage my money. I've taken all this advice from him for so many years. I'm going to give him a call. And just so you know, that happens to our clients. The funny thing is it doesn't happen as quickly as anybody wants, because as you know, nothing ever happens on anybody's freaking timeline. But I absolutely love that. So let's talk a little bit about consistency, because as you know, being, a clinical therapist, consistency was very important to be able to shape overall behavior of your clients. It's very important for advisors to do that. When you're coaching advisors on behavioral finance, is there a frequency level where you're talking about the frequency of communication, the frequency of meetings, things like that? Would you mind expanding on that a smidge?
Yeah, well, so I think you made a great point earlier about nothing happens as quickly as people would like. And I know when I started creating content, you're frustrated at first, and now now I'm to the point. I shouldn't say this. I will. We're going to be authentic today. Now now I'm to the point where I can. It used to be I would post some banger on social media and it would just like crickets, right? And now, now I'm to the point where it's like, look, if I put something on LinkedIn, I'm like, this is kind of so-so, but it's like it's still going to do numbers because you've built up that consistency. So I think that's important. From a behavioral perspective, though, consistency has this sort of partner in Cialdini's work, which is commitment, right? And so people want to make commitments and then act in a manner that is consistent with the commitments they've made. They want to be true to their word. And so one of the things that I encourage people to do that not as many people have taken me up on as I would have liked, hopefully some of your listeners will, is we all know what an IPS is, right? We all know what an investment policy statement is in the industry, and advisors are forever promising to their clients, like, look, these are the rules and the strictures I'll adhere to in the care and safeguarding of your money, and that's an appropriate commitment to make. but there should be a reciprocal commitment, reciprocity, right? There should be a reciprocal commitment coming the other way from the client, because we know that one of the biggest pitfalls in our world is non-compliance, right? Like we know that about 40% of Americans receive advice. Less than half of them take that advice as it's delivered, which is consistent with everything we know about, diet and exercise and medical, medical non-compliance is one of the leading causes of death in the US. People who have access to doctors, people who have access to medicine, and then just don't do what they say. And so I encourage people to have their clients sign a behavioral policy statement to make that commitment. And actually, my book, The Laws of Wealth, the first half of The Laws of Wealth is just my behavioral policy statement. Those like 12 rules, that's just my behavioral policy statement to say, look, I, as your advisor, am going to follow, these are the rules I'm going to follow in the care and, proper care and feeding of your money. But you have a reciprocal responsibility, which is I can't do this without your help. And if we're going to do this together, I need you to be long term. I need you to not watch catastrophic news headlines, whatever your behavioral policy statement is. And people want to act in a way that's consistent with their commitments. And you have them make that commitment in a cold, sort of emotionless state. And then when they come to you in March of 2020 and say, sell everything, go, look, there was a time, when we decided that we were going to do different. And we knew that there would be days like this. And I think that power of commitment and consistency is so powerful from a behavioral perspective for clients.
When I was a marriage counselor, which by the way is the worst job I think I've ever had in my entire life, one of the major things that I had learned when I was going through my supervision period, which by the way, as a young therapist or a new therapist, you have to have somebody who's overseeing you, much like what you were just talking about with, reviewing the tapes. Well, we had to do that in our own therapeutic sessions. And the number one reason why everybody got a divorce is expectations. Well, she should know this. He should know this. You as a financial services professional, and here goes with consistency, with, reciprocity. When you are reinforcing the behaviors that you're expecting in your clients with clear expectations, much like the 12 that you just talked about, right? Having that behavioral statement, so we've seen what's happening right now in the market coming. Right. It's time. We know the market cycles and this stuff just happens. 9, 10, 12, 14, 18 months ago, if you firmly believe with what you have been writing about for many, many years now, you should have been reinforcing that sort of, look, hey, you know what? We're about due, right? If you remember that, that behavioral statement that we had, behavioral policy statement that we had you sign, I'm going to review a couple of these things to consistently reinforce that. I think a lot of advisors, it's like when they give them a financial plan and they think that the client is just going to take that home and do everything that's in the damn financial plan. But it's just like that 50% thing that you were just talking about with medical and all of that stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like nobody, Med Faber is always talking about this, and it's brilliant. I love it. He's always citing this statistic that's been around for a couple of months, and it's that coming into 2022, client expectations, forward return expectations for the next decade were 17% a year. Okay, so we were going to get 17% a year on the S&P for the next decade, after a decade of effectively 15% a year for a decade. And now we're going to get a further 17% a year. And, we know that human beings do this. We know we take the recent past and sort of project it into the future indefinitely. But an advisor's job is to sort of inoculate their clients against the future, doing the very thing you talked about. Because if your client thinks that going into 2022, they're going to have 17%, like they're due 17% a year annualized, you have no chance, right? If that's their expectation, whatever you do is going to be a letdown. And so expectation management is just huge.
Yeah. I love the idea of setting those clear expectations. I love the idea that the recency bias is such a humongous thing that we have to just combat regularly, because it also happens on the back end, right? The market is consistently not doing well, kind of like it has now, where we got a double whammy with the bond market and, the stock market. That recency bias is going to swing the other way. All right. So if you had parting words for this year and in years to come for advisors, if you could give them one piece of advice in order to encapsulate your wisdom that you've imparted on financial services over the many years that you've been doing this, I know this is a super loaded question, dude. What would it be?
It would be that we're going to keep it clean. We got two shrinks on the call. We're going to say, we're going to keep it shrinky and say it's the relationship that heals, right? If you look at the outcomes literature from psychotherapy, one of the most outstanding findings in my field of education was that the thing that is curative in a therapeutic relationship is not the school of thought, like it's not the approach of the psychotherapist, it's not the years of education, it's none of these things. It's the level of rapport, like self-reported rapport between the client and the therapist. And I see a direct analog to the world of financial services. And Accenture came out with this study last year that I talk about every time I get a chance. They ask people, what are you looking for in a financial advisor? The number one answer was someone who gets me. The number two answer was someone with whom I share values. And the number three answer was someone I can hang with socially, like, so, someone whose company I enjoy sort of like organically. And it's fascinating because like the technical competence is assumed. Like, we live in a day and age where it's pretty easy to see if someone, like, I can Google a couple of advisors, look at their reviews, look at the letters behind their name, years of experience, whatever my criteria are. I can kind of figure out with relative ease whether or not they are competent to create a diversified portfolio for me in a financial plan, which is like a very low bar and very easy to do. Whether or not I click with them, right? Whether or not they get me, whether or not they take the time to understand me and my family and our needs, and whether or not I respect them enough to listen to them when stuff hits the fan and like I really need their advice, is a wholly different conversation. It's impossible to ascertain on a website, and it's what matters. So it's not the technical competence doesn't matter, it absolutely does, but like we're almost to a person technically competent. Like, to do the blocking and tackling of financial advice provision, most people have the meat and potatoes of it down, and it comes to the relationship stuff. So just one piece of advice: focus on that reciprocity, focus on the relationships, and a lot of other good stuff will fall in place.
And we believe that either creating really wonderful video or creating great audio content through a podcast or very engaging, personalized, intimate, authentic social media posts can help round some of that stuff out, instead of what we call it is scaled credibility, right? Scaled authenticity. It's a wonderful way for people to hear your voice, feel who you are. And we, of course, side on the side of podcasting because it's very intimate and people listen to their podcasts in their quiet time. All right. My favorite question to ask, which is something I implemented, I don't know, quite a while ago, which is what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Nobody ever asked me about my hot sauce, Matt. I'm a really skilled hot sauce chef. No one asked me about my hot
Oh
sauce.
my God. Okay. You got to expand on that. That I've never heard anybody refer to themselves as a hot sauce chef.
That's way too dramatic. I'm a guy who blends up peppers with his son. So my children have a freakish taste for hot sauce. Like, I mean, like two of my three kids are just like fiends for hot sauce, to the point where it's expensive. Like we got hooked on this black truffle hot sauce. It's called Truff. It's so good. This is the best tip you're getting from me on this whole show. So Truff is truff is incredible, like black truffle hot sauce, but it's expensive. And like we just pour it over everything. And so I was like, you guys are killing my financial plan here with your fancy hot sauce needs. And so my son and I, he's 9, we started we started making hot sauce together. We make serrano and jalapeno and habaneros as hot as we get. We're not trying to like, blow your hair back here. We're just like some nice flavor. And it's a great tradition. I've given it to some folks at industry conferences. So next time you see me speaking at a conference, hit me up. I'll bring you some Southern Ghost is the name that my son chose for it. He's big into the supernatural, and he's a proud Atlantan. So Southern Ghost is the name of our hot sauce company. We don't sell it, but
I don't know. After this show, brother, you might have to.
I know.
I love good hot sauce. And I like it when you can taste the heat, but you still have the great flavor. I don't want to, so I'm assuming you guys watch the hot ones, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so, you're getting to wing 3, and they're one of my favorite ones. And I can't remember her name. She said, "How has nobody killed you yet?" And I just thought that was one of the greatest responses, is she's like, drinking beer after beer. Anyway, so
no, I don't. I don't love the really, really hot stuff, and it's like anytime I go to a hot sauce store and they have stuff sort of marketed by, it's like gonna make your head explode or something. I'm like, I'm not interested. Just some good flavor.
Dr. Crosby, dude, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate all of the wisdom that you imparted. If somebody wants to reach out and find out a little bit more about the new thing that you guys have coming out with Orion, or what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, for sure. So check out my podcast, right? Standard Deviations. Have you check out my podcast. And then if you're interested in the Orion bit, go to orion.com/practice-management, and you can get all the stuff there.
Yay. All right, man. Well, thank you for all of your thought leadership. We appreciate you. And everybody, listen, if you just want to dip your toe into the water of what influence really truly is, then you need to just join the PodRocket Academy for free. It's free. Look, there's great courses in there, how to, solidify your messaging, really how to start your whole podcast. We have this course called Podcasting 101 that will tell you everything that you need to do if you want to start a podcast. We've got great video courses that are in there now. We're really trying to be a great educational resource in a compliant manner so that you or your team can find out how you can truly become more influential in the marketplace. So for Dr. Crosby, Orion, and all of us here at ProudMouth, we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon. Thanks for listening to the Top Advisor Marketing Podcast, brought to you by ProudMouth. If you want to know more about how you can be your own loud, visit us at proudmouth.com and sign up for the PodRocket Academy. Through courses and office hours led by professional podcast producers and digital marketers, you will learn everything you need to know to become the trusted subject matter expert you were meant to be.